Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, Dutch slave, surf, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm a useful idiot, and I want to talk about Bidenomics. Of course, over the last 4 years, we've heard Joe Biden and his minions in the media, liberal media, all talking about the astonishing achievements of Bidenomics. And of course, even a casual perusal of what Bidenomics has been shows that it's been a complete disaster. And the fact that Biden goes out there and brags about having a historic economy that's firing on all pistons, and that he saved us from the travesty of the Trump years is really pathetic and ridiculous. And I can't believe he goes out there and in his demented, fetid rat turd mind thinks that he's one of the greatest economic presidents in U.S. history. Just unbelievable. So I'm going to go over some basic statistics. I know a lot of people out there are already familiar with a lot of this, but it's still worth going over, particularly as I've read some comments on some liberal videos recently where people talk about the fact that it was so horrible for them under Trump in his 4 years, and then just how wonderful everything's been for him under the last 4 years of Biden, which is utterly astonishing. I mean, I'm sure most Americans, except for the very upper levels of the middle class, the upper middle class, the top 10% and the 1%, who of course have thrived off all the chaos, as they always do. But let's go down a little list I thought was pretty good that shows the staggering disaster that so-called Bidenomics is. The typical household now spends $1,070 more a month to buy the same stuff that they used to buy before Biden got in office. Two-thirds of Americans now have second jobs, are cutting back on spending, and skipping paying bills. Home insurance is up by 40%. Rentals are up by 30%. 61% of people can't even afford the median rent in this country now. Of course, a lot of that has to do with hedge funds, but that's another topic. Gas is up 45%. The average mortgage rate is up 48%. The average mortgage rate and cost of housing has doubled in 4 years. 44% of retirees want to return to work. The new home sales fell 11% just last month, and we've seen nothing but historic uh, falls in overall home sales for the last 4 years, and no wonder. Incredibly expensive, and then the interest rates have gone up as well. So, entire sector of the American public are now completely priced out of buying a house. Certainly for the younger generations, and the same goes for rentals. The fact that people can even afford the rents that we have now is just mind-boggling. Pending home sales dropped at the fastest rate in history. 8 million migrant encounters, what they call them, the level of violence in this country. And that shift, a lot of it's due to the fact that in the old days, we used to have a lot of illegal migrants that were Mexicans. And they would come here and they would take a lot of service industry jobs and labor jobs and work really hard and are truly living the American dream. And hats off to them. I think any kind of talk about giving amnesty or incorporating a lot of those illegal immigrants into the economy is a great thing. But now we have orchestrated, manufactured migrant streams coming from all over Latin America and all over the world, pouring over this porous border. And just like when Cuba emptied out a lot of the riffraff in their country and sent them over to the United States, now we have a lot of countries like Venezuela. They're sending their gang members up here. They're emptying out their mental asylums. They're emptying out their prisons. And then there's a collusion between the United States government, the governments of all these Latin American countries, and the cartels. It's a big gravy train for them, and they bring up these masses of people into the United States and then dump them into America. So we're now experiencing incredible levels of just heinous crime perpetrated by all these immigrants that are coming into the country now. And there's a lot of whining out there from the liberals about the fact, oh, these poor children and the separated families and all that. But the predominant number of migrants that are coming in now, 80 to 90% are all males in the age range of late teens to the early 30s. And they're coming here and they're looking for trouble. And they've already incorporated themselves into the crime syndicates in the U.S., both perpetrating just heinous rapes and murders and assaults, but also organizing their own little criminal activities in the United States, getting involved in retail theft and the like. The homeless in Chicago have tripled in the last 4 years. So they already had a big problem with homelessness, but now it's actually tripled in Chicago in the last 4 years. California is the same. 20% of the population now purportedly in California is homeless. The murder rates in the United States are in the double digits now. The jobless claims are in the highest they've been in 3 years. Job openings are the lowest in 3 years. Over 500 stores have closed down, and that's a very modest figure. If you look at just the last 4 years, there's been a staggering amount of retail closing for all the obvious reasons, crime being one of them, and not being able to operate businesses in these cities, in the inner cities, where there's so much homelessness and drug abuse and the like. So I'm going to do a separate video on the fact that we're in the middle of yet another retail apocalypse. And I've been doing videos over the last 15 years talking about the gradual, steady decline of the retail business in general. And it just seems to be picking up steam from all the pressures, inflation, and crime and the like. So that figure of 500 stores is extremely modest. Let's say a good example of that was Walgreens, which used to be a staple of the American economic landscape. It's closing 2,000 stores. So that's a good example. That's just one store, one corporation that's closing down 2,000 stores across the nation, and we're going to see that repeated over and over again. We've already seen it repeated over and over again. So yeah, the figure of California's 20% is actually 20% of California is living in poverty. 20% is one of the largest economies in the world, just the state of California, and 20% of California is living in poverty. And so the homelessness rate's probably somewhere around 10%. 46% of Americans don't even have $500. And we've seen those kind of figures over the last 10 or 20 years that most Americans, at least a high percentage, don't have much money for emergencies. And something as simple as $1,000 or $2,000 problem pops up and they go down the shitter. So, and then of course the bottom line in all this, in the midst of all this chaos in this economy, $175 billion has been sent to Ukraine to not only supply them with weapons, but to sustain their pension programs, to pay their government wages. The Ukrainian parliament just gave themselves a huge raise, and of course all this money that's being sent over there is being grifted. But that's just a piece of the puzzle of how ass backwards the economy is, and the economy has been under 4 years of frickin' Joe Biden. Another good example of that is, he keeps boasting about creating more jobs than any president in U.S. history, but when you actually look at the numbers, first of all, as always and has been for decades, all the numbers for unemployment and the employed are completely cooked. They've altered the way they measure unemployment, so all the millions and millions of Americans who just drop off the radar and aren't even looking in for jobs anymore, they're not counted in those statistics. So the whole basis of the statistics is bogus from the beginning. But this whole employment miracle of Joe Biden that he constantly boasts about is utter and complete bullshit from top to bottom. The fact is that all the new jobs that have been created the last 4 years under Biden are three things. They are people that were laid off or left their jobs during the pandemic getting rehired. And then a huge percentage of it is government. Government, even in light of an economic catastrophe, the government just keeps growing. So a lot of those are government hires, and then last of all, almost all the new jobs created in the last 4 years were illegal immigrants being hired. So Bidenomics, the fact that there's even a term like that is just so ridiculous. They should call it shitnomics. Joe Biden's shitnomics, because he has absolutely destroyed the U.S. economy in the last 4 years. He's destroyed everything, but he's definitely destroyed the American economy. And this shitstorm that they've papered over, this economic shitstorm that they've been papering over since the 2008 crash, is just held together with bubble gum and paper clips. None of those problems, none of the systemic and foundational problems of the economy have been fixed. They keep going on and they keep pasting it over. Commercial real estate should have crashed a whole bunch of times in the last 15 or 16 years, but they just keep pushing the can down the road and find ways to just keep pushing it ahead so they don't have to deal with it. But it's all coming to a head now. And another thing that they talk about, of course, is this illusion that, oh, gee, we went from this crashed stock market in 2008, and since then, now it's up to 40,000. But all one has to do, just basic economics and common sense, shows that the entire stock market is fueled by stock buybacks. All the corporations and banks have been doing historic and astonishing levels of buying their own stock, which just keeps driving up the stock market, keeps driving up the stock dividends, paying off to their shareholders, has no relation to the real economy whatsoever. So people that talk about, oh, the economy's doing so great, look, the stock market's at 40,000. That's pure bullshit. It just, the higher it gets, the farther it has to fall. And the ultimate shitstorm is coming thanks to Joe Biden. Well, I want to interject too. This whole idea that inflation, they blame it on the war in Ukraine, they blame it on supply chain issues, and that's all bullshit. All the inflation came from Joe Biden's staggering government spending programs on everything under the sun, and the tsunami of inflation came from all these stimulus checks they sent out. So the Americans are all fat and happy getting their stimulus checks, being completely oblivious that they're going to have to pay for it on the back end, and that's what they're doing now. And then also the fact that there's a lot of corporate greed in there. They took the inflationary environment and all the blame on the supply chain issues and the like, and scarcity of ingredients, and just blame it on that. And then the prices just skyrocket. And then Joe Biden has the nerve to go out there and say, oh, well, inflation is abating now because I'm Joe Biden and I'm so fucking smart. But no, he's an idiot. Like most of our presidents, he's an economic idiot. And he goes out there and makes all these false claims. And inflation is a direct result of his spending. It's just that simple. It's economics 101. I'm a fucking dude living in an apartment in the big city, retired, used to work in restaurants and grocery stores, and even I can figure that out. Don't have to know much about economics to know that. And so the big picture, of course, is all these pressures have been building up for decades. They've been papering it over since the crash of 2008, and it's all coming to a head now. So between the interest rates being risen, and the inflation, the rampant inflation, which is of course much higher than they're talking about, and commercial real estate is finally going to have to pay the piper and is crashing, and the fact that 90% of stocks in general are owned by the top 1%. It's not like the retail investors and the people out there that have their retirement accounts and their financial brokers getting a small piece of the pie, which of course eventually gets taken away because the people at the top know what's going to happen, and they can get in and out of the market and avoid the damage. But to the retail investors, they can't. But this shitstorm's coming, and I know they've been talking about. I've been watching this for over 20 years now, 15 years. They've staved off any kind of economic collapse with all these pressures and this foundational rot, but it's coming. it has to come eventually. And so don't be fooled by the stock market being at 40,000 and the fact that large sectors of the economy are still functioning and that some people are managed to survive and even thrive through this. The shitstorm's coming. And my gut feeling is telling me that they're going to hold it together, and then when Trump gets president, the crash will finally get here, and then they can just stick it all on his shoulders. And the bewildered herd of the American public will soon forget all the damage that Joe Biden did the last 4 years, and the shitstorm is coming. The big economic collapse is coming, and it's going to happen probably under Trump's watch, and they're going to stick it on him, and that will be the narrative. So, hey, Joe, I'm sure fucking glad you're gone now, and thank you for all your Bidenomics. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.